Hi, I'm author Lin Lustig, and I want art in my books, so I am drawing it, more specifically, chibi art. So, I thought today I would take you through my entire process for doing these silly little pieces of art. So, this is going to be one of my characters in my book, my Our Ship Must Sail series. So, usually when I'm going to get started, I have a prompt in mind, and the prompt is going to come from a line in the book, something that's exceptionally silly or just had a implication in my brain of how it was going to look. And then I come right on here to Clip Studio Paint and start messing around. I need to get the basic head shape first, and a lot of that also includes the hair shape. Both my characters have very specific hairstyles that they have constantly because it's much easier to identify them when I do that. So this is Pith. She is exceedingly optimistic and goofy and has no idea what she's doing in life, and I can definitely relate to that. But here you can see I am just really starting to get the basic lines down. I'm being far too much of a perfectionist, and of course, erasing all those little crossover points. There's a way you could do that very fancily, and I don't actually remember how. Something with the vectors? Not sure. But so definitely the most simple shapes here. Really, honestly, kind of generic and classic when it comes to chibis and the kind of art that you're going to see in my books. It's much more about the expression of the art and not the detail, quote unquote, prettiness of it. Though I do usually enjoy how these turn out as far as just the full impact of them. So, haha. Yeah, anytime there's something that's like really close, but it's still just kind of off, I do really love using the liquify tool. It just makes things so easy. And when I'm drawing, 100 of these for a book, it makes sense to cheat once in a while. And it is so funny because it's like, well, it's just a tool. Using a tool is not cheating. Using a drawing tablet is not cheating, etc., etc. And this is done before I got my brand new tablet, which has a screen on it and has made drawing a much different process. I really love it. But anyway, so one of the most identifying features is that she has a ponytail. Therefore, got to make sure that she has that. And there's a very specific swish to it that I have, of course, practiced time and time again. I make some crap up for the ears. Granted, I've looked a little bit more into how to properly draw ears since, and they're not as wonky, but I've definitely seen some really wonky ones before in webcomics, so I don't feel too bad. Because honestly, people are going to look at these images for, I don't know, maybe 2 seconds and then continue reading. So I don't need to focus so much on every single little detail, although I certainly spend too much time anyway, but some of that's just because I love it. So getting eye shape is really important for the characters. Usually it takes me a couple of goes in order to really get it down. But this is a more of a practice image. I'm not even really sure I'm going to use it in the book. We'll find out in like a couple months whether or not it gets published in it or not. But yeah, here I go with trying to keep my hand from shaking too horribly. Getting frustrated. But one of the really fun things with then, of course, these chibi arts being kind of silly is they really don't have to be exact. Having one eye bigger than the other is a really good tool for figuring out a particular mood or kind of a funky little sideways glare or whatever the case may be. This one, I believe, was taken more or less from the book as a desire for eating some cookies, as we all have from time to time. All right, the other thing with this style that I have is that the eyes are very simple in their generic design. Yeah, I definitely just go from like head to hair and then into the expression. And I usually do the eyes and the mouth on a different layer because I have a tendency to screw things up and overlap with like the hair layer, and the hair is really nice, so I don't want to mess with that. And this just allows me a lot more playing around to see what does and doesn't work. Oh, and then there's the dreaded hand. This is actually a newer thing for me where I am attempting to use the hands as in those little like floating chibi hands. It's a little strange. I'm not used to it yet, but I think that it'll be another tool that I can utilize in order to really get some mood down because the hands really are so expressive. So once I get the expression, it is definitely time to move on to much more of the details. And you can see me trying to make apparently claw hands here. I promise a hand happens somewhere in the end. But not this one. Oh my. Yeah, this took me a bit. But for drawing hands, I do tend to work much more from an attempted memory. Usually I give it a go a couple times just to see how my skills have progressed. And when that ends up being frustrating and terrible, then I'll go and I'll look up a reference and actually, art more accurately. Otherwise, you get left with a lot of this. But honestly, using references are amazing, but I really do feel like I have to challenge myself and think outside of what the reference is telling me. So I really encourage, try drawing something a few times from a reference and then, close the reference, see if you can do it from memory. Because that's where I really enjoy then, where my art comes through, is when it just feels like it's flowing together without quote unquote trying. And you can see I have this structure here with the hands, and I am definitely looking at one off screen, sorry, in order to get this, pinching hold for a cookie, because, we all got to hold our cookies. I also couldn't decide if I wanted it to be a left hand or a right hand, but all hands are good. One of the things with Clip Studio Paint that's really great is they have all of these assets, and the assets are entirely for commercial use. So if I wanted, I could actually go onto Clip Studio Paint and find a set of chibi hands that are pre-drawn, and I could just import those and pop them in kind of like a stamp. But again, I choose to actually sit here and try and draw the things because it is not so much about the speed of getting the art done, at least not now, but it is much more my desire to improve along the way. So I've started a new layer so I can do kind of an outline of the hand and get rid of the sketch marks. Again, a little too much of a perfectionist, but what are you gonna do? Other than waste more time. It is really interesting. I've been studying lately how details, like which details do and don't matter when it comes to a piece of art. And I never paid attention to how few details there truly are in a lot of the art pieces that I find absolutely stunning. You see it as a whole instead of looking at each individual stroke, and that makes a big difference. But on something as simple like this, I do feel like having those clean lines makes an impact that is going to be useful for me. Especially because these are going to then get printed in a book, and the book doesn't have a lot of detail in shading. I have a couple images that I've gone ahead and printed with shading, black and white, but it definitely doesn't leave a lot of space for a lot of tiny details. So when I do a commissioned chibi, I spend a lot more time on the details for an overall impact. But for the ones that go in the book, simple is best. And that is a phrase I love that I learned in Japan from a character, Monokuro Bu. Simple is best was always the little tagline that went with him. So cute. The little black and white pig. Ah, so adorable. Used to be a little bit of a Japanophile. Which, I am sitting here drawing chibis, so I guess that kind of makes sense. So now that I've drawn the hand once in a way that I thought was respectable, now I move to draw it again. And I'll do that pretty frequently as I'll go through art. I'll go through a segment of the art and try it a couple of times over and over, even when I think I've gotten all right with it. And again, it's all about challenging myself. So I guess you could say most of my process for art, right now at least, comes in the challenge. So I'll do the parts that I know I can do. I've got the head down, I can do the expression, things like that. But the hand here is where I am spending a lot more time in order to teach my brain more or less what the hand needs to look like and what it needs to do for this particular image. I think something I'd really like to learn a little more on is how to use the thicknesses of lines to really accent, do like a thick outline and a bit thinner lines on the inside for the detail. I really like Art Nouveau, and so it would be really amazing if at some point I can combine Art Nouveau and chibi. I don't know if that'd be super weird, but hey, I'm here for it. Also, I'm constantly breaking rules anyway, so why not just do weird things? I think that's a really important part of art, actually. There are rules to follow, and then there are rules to break. It's exactly like when you are writing a book. Oh, look at that little tiny macaron. Yeah, in the book, so there's this like real big side quest with getting all the best macarons. And so my characters are constantly eating them, and I'm kind of jealous because I can't eat them anymore. So I'm living vicariously. So at this stage, it's a lot more the fine-tuning. It's me going through and seeing how the overall impression of the image is. It's probably doing a bit more line cleanup at this point, because we are closing in on the finished product, of course. And you can see how this printed in a book along with a bunch of text is a really nice accompaniment because it's not overly distracting. It's just enough to kind of give you this little pause to let your eyes adjust, let them relax from the text, give your brain something else to compute for a moment, and then you can go right back onto it. And part of that comes from my personal desire to have those breaks. I actually have a hard time staying focused when I'm reading a book. The words kind of mash together and I lose focus pretty easily. My friends theorize I have a small bit of dyslexia, which would make sense why sometimes the words jump around. But that is, well, I'm not actually diagnosed or anything. Maybe I'm just lazy. It's hard to say. But doing this project that, again, breaks all the rules. I was listening to a class where the instructor literally said, you can't just put pictures in the book, so you got to rely on your skills on blah, 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 blah. And I was like, or I can just put the pictures in the book. But I don't rely on them. You could listen to an audiobook of Our Ship Must Sail and it would make perfect sense. But these definitely add just a little something extra. Gotta have those crumbs. So yeah, final little bits to experiment with. Get the full look of it down. And to properly enjoy my envy of their cookie consumption. It's like if Cookie Monster were an evil pirate, that actually explains my other main character. But look how cute she is. Every once in a while I'll do like little symbols on the side and be like, burp, burp, burp. Nope, burp, burp, burp's not gonna work this time. And I do make weird noises to describe a lot of emotions and reactions. So that also doesn't translate into the book. But if I do an audiobook, maybe that's what I do that instead. But yeah, all these extra little face lines, they can add so much personality. And sometimes they're too much. So it all depends. Constantly on the wrong layer. Like, I only have, what, 5 layers over there? Even then, I will always be on the wrong one. It's like a special skill. If you guys do art, let me know if you do the same thing, because some days I just feel like an absolute derp. But I'm really glad you guys, well, see, this is where my mouth doesn't cooperate with my brain. But I'm really glad you guys were able to join me and hang out and see what my art process is like. It's a lot of, honestly, turning off my brain at times, getting into the flow state, and just using some kind of weird intuition on what needs to go where for whatever image is in my head. And I would love to understand how that works. I get asked it once in a while, like, how do you see these things? How do you translate them onto the paper? And it's like, you know what? That is just magic, because I don't know. But there you have it. So here is Piff enjoying a little tiny macaron. And I hope that you guys go and check out Our Ship Must Sail and give it a go, because it is a very silly, very adorable book. And it's actually been well received, which is always kind of a surprise. You never really know. You know, when you're pushing a boundary and you're doing something different, people are either going to love it, hate it, or ignore it entirely. So far this one's been pretty loved, and that makes me really happy. So don't forget to like, subscribe, come back soon, and let me know what you're drawing down in the comments. So all right, I'll see you next time.